HarperCollins presents Everything is Washable and Other Life Lessons. Written and read by Sali Hughes. Acknowledgements. First and foremost, I must thank Georgia Garrett, who supports me, believes in me, and frightens me, all at the optimal levels. Truly, I cannot believe my good fortune. And to Louise Haynes and her team at Fourth Estate. Their generosity, patience, kindness, and continued enthusiasm during a very difficult time personally made all the difference professionally. I really can't thank them enough. Huge thanks to my brother, Win, who filled some of my memory gaps and remains the family's best lighter of fires. Literally, not metaphorically. Thank you also to the indefatigable Jo Jones, Lauren Oakey and Leo Pemberton for generously allowing me to shirk some of my beauty bank's responsibilities towards the end of the writing process, shouldering my workload as well as their own, to ensure our services weren't interrupted. Thanks also to Jimmy Bent and Marco Mini, who will be furious if Leo is mentioned without them. And to the brilliantly talented and decent Ed Griffiths and Megan Pidgeon at Insanity Group for moving around the other half of my life to accommodate the book. Thank you to TT for unfailingly being there and always understanding me. This book couldn't exist without the quarterlies, dailies, hourlies. Your love and support means the world. For a long time I stopped being able to write this book because my mind was so fogged by thoughts of those I knew would hate it. In the end, the advice I gave myself is the same advice I'd now give any writer struggling to proceed. Choose just one person who'd appreciate the piece, someone who'd find it helpful and valuable, and write it for them and them only. And so on that basis, a huge thanks must go to my dear friend Lucy Mangan, the person who asks me the most questions in life, many of them repeated verbatim in this book, who never left my mind and for whom it remains a challenge and a pleasure to stay on my game. Finally, thank you to my beloved husband, Daniel Meyer, who forced me to get up while at my lowest ebb and pushed me forwards until it was done. And to Marvin and Arthur, the most interesting, funny, kind, supportive and understanding sons any mother could ask for. You three truly are the best, and you proved the book's title correct. Chapter 1. Home. Several years ago, my then boyfriend and I had to be at the Hay Literary Festival. And, in an uncharacteristic fit of nostalgia, I suggested we drive to the village in which I grew up, some 45 minutes away. We toured the landmarks, my grandparents' house where I was born, the primary school I'd attended, the comprehensive I barely went to, the library where I sometimes hid until school had finished and I could return home, and of course my childhood homes. Ending at where I'd started, the small end of terrace I shared with my two big brothers and my father, following my mother's departure to a tiny flat a mile or so away. Dan and I had been stood outside for no more than a minute or two, peering as politely as we could at the house, when the door opened and a friendly older couple asked us if they could help. I told them I'd grown up in their house, and they immediately invited us in for tea. I feel tearful whenever I think of them. Not only because their home, now bright, lovingly decorated and happy, holds so many unusual memories for me, but also because the owners were so generous and warm that I somehow felt more at home than I did when I could rightfully call that house my own. As they showed us around, sharing with us all the work they'd done over the past 30-plus years, the conversation turned to how they'd come to buy the place. They told us that some time after my family must have moved on, a man had moved in, an older Englishman whose wife had left him. He'd apparently become so depressed that he developed a drink problem and become what we'd now call a hoarder. There had been vermin, they told me, litter throughout the house, damp, mould. Every room was full of junk, old newspapers, broken furniture, filthy carpets and bags of rubbish. The overgrown garden concealed broken glass, scrap, and yet more rubbish bags. They were glad, they told me, that I'd never had to see my former home, the house we all loved, in such squalor. It had been a very sorry state of affairs. I nodded.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?